The Poet. Where Two Ways Met. By Virginia Olson. Acknowledgement: I could not have completed this book without the help of my son, J. Kyle Humphreys. He has loved, encouraged, researched, edited and advised me every step of the way. Chapter 1. The Calling. 9-year-old Ray sat under an old oak tree, in the backyard of their Mississippi farmhouse. As the words flowed through his mind, he scratched them in the sandy dirt with a stick. He didn't often have a pencil or paper, but he felt compelled to write them down. Ray Lindsey didn't understand then, that God was calling him to write for him. When he heard the train whistle blow, he quickly rubbed out the words and stood up to watch the freight train as it made its way down the tracks, which ran just beyond his backyard. It was a common thing at that time in 1926 for hobos to hop the trains and hitch a ride to the next town. They were usually hungry, so when they'd see a farmhouse they would jump off the train and beg for a meal. Ray grinned as a ragged hobo came walking toward him. This one had an old guitar strapped to his back. "We got another one, Mom," Ray hollered. His mother was a sweet Christian woman, and she fed every one of them that came through. Ray made quick friends with this hobo as they sat on the back step and waited for his mom to bring the man a plate of food. The hobo strummed his guitar and sang a few songs for Ray, about his love for Jesus. That day was etched in his memory, and many years later it inspired him to write a song, called The Gospel Hobo. The Gospel Hobo. By Ray Lindsey. Well, the old freight train pulled into the yard, at the edge of our town. Before it hardly came to a stop, a hobo hit the ground. With an old guitar across his back, and a smile upon his face. Said, "Gather round and hear my song, about amazing grace. Well, amazing grace, how sweet the sound, that saved a wretch like me. In a hobo jungle, just out of town, where I bowed a hobo's knee. When another hobo told me about this man from Galilee. Of how he'd change a hobo's life, and make a hobo free. Now I don't want your money, I just want to sing my song. And when them train wheels roll again, I'll be a long time gone. From the beaches of Miami, to the rocky shores of Maine. I'll sing about amazing grace, till Jesus comes again. I've rode the rails through Georgia, and on down through Alabama. Got a lot of friends in Tuscaloosa, and some in Birmingham. But name your town, and I've been there, I've been most every place. But now I'm going back again, to sing amazing grace. On Hobo's Day in heaven, that'll be a sight to see. Ol' 97 waitin' there, for hobos just like me. With Jesus at the throttle, to show us o'er the place. 10,000 hobos shoutin' about amazing grace. Chapter 2. Coming of Age. Raymond Joseph Lindsey was born August 6, 1917 in Sturgis, Mississippi, to Jacob Joseph Lindsey and Ida Bell Hudspeth Lindsey. He had one older brother, Henry Felix Lindsey, and one younger sister, Geneva Bell Lindsey Yandell. He had a lot of friends growing up, and he was popular with the girls. Once, while on a double date, Ray sat in the back seat of his friend's car, with his girlfriend on his lap, his left arm hanging out the window. Another car sideswiped them, badly injuring Ray's arm. He carried a deep scar for the rest of his life. In 1940, his parents bought a large house in West Point, Mississippi. His mom turned it into a boarding house, where she rented apartments to young ladies who were in school there in West Point. Ray had been on his own for several years, but he was very close to his mother, so he visited her there often. At 22 years old, he was quite handsome, just over 6 feet tall, with sandy brown hair. Everyone loved Ray. He was always the life of the party. Several of the girls, living there at the boarding house, tried hard for his attention. But he only had eyes for one beauty, by the name of Catherine Vale. Chapter 3. Catherine. Catherine was a sweet Christian girl, with the face of an angel, and the figure of a model. She was quiet, and very serious about her schooling. She had already suffered a lot of trauma in her life. When Catherine was 4 years old, she found a dynamite cap in her yard. It exploded when she picked it up, causing her to lose parts of 2 fingers, and the first joint of her thumb. Her mother died that same year, leaving Catherine, her 5 brothers, and 2 sisters, to be raised by her father alone. Her father, Richard Lawrence Vale, later remarried a nice woman, who was good to his children. They had 2 daughters, which expanded their already large family. Catherine loved her daddy, and they were very close. One afternoon, 16-year-old Catherine stood at the edge of their yard, watching him plow their fields, with an old horse-drawn plow. When suddenly, a snake frightened the horse. The horse reared up, throwing her daddy backwards to the ground. Catherine watched in horror, as the big plow blade came down, piercing through her daddy's chest. The frightened horse then ran, dragging her beloved father to his death. Catherine had given her life to God, at a very young age. And it was her faith in God, which sustained her through those devastating events. The first day that Ray met Catherine, at the boarding house, he knew that he just had to get acquainted with her. She was everything he had ever wanted, so he took every opportunity to talk to her. There was a new movie in the theaters, called Gone with the Wind. Everyone said it was a great movie, so he asked Catherine to go. After that, they were inseparable. They married, on April 12, 1941. Chapter 4. The Cabin. Very much in love, their first 2 years were spent enjoying their lives together. They lived in a small 2-room cabin near a lake. And spent many hours fishing, and planning their future. Ray often wrote poetry to Catherine, like this one. Roses. By Ray Lindsey. These roses, dearest, that I bring, are just to say to you. You're just as precious as the day I heard you say I do. Emotions rise, and so they fall, and trifles come between. But never can they change this, dear, you're still my rose and queen. Watch. By Ray Lindsey. I watch you in the morning. I watch you noon and night. I watch you when you're angry, and fear, with all my might. I watch you when you're throwing smiles to guys around the place. I just don't want you wrinkling up the makeup on your face. I watch you in your nighties, and then I start to scheme. But suddenly remember, that that's a washed-up dream. I watch you when you go to sales, though sometimes they are fine. For just today I watched your wrist, for $1.89. And on another birthday. Bygone Days. By Ray Lindsey. In bygone days, we've bought the phrase, like I love you, and so. We know before we ope the note, just how the phrase will go. The roses red, the poem goes, and so the violets blue. And repetition has it thus, dear, I was meant for you. And when these words have fallen flat, the deeds are there to see. The note goes in the trash can, for that's where it needs to be. And when the note has been dispensed, the heart cries, give me fact. 1,000,000,000 words I'd trade, for just one little act. So musing on these thoughts last night, the years ran swiftly back. I saw 1,000,000 bygone words, but not one deed or act. And so today I empty stand, my hands are empty bare. If I should have to prove my love, there's simply nothing there. My heart was gripped, and so I fell upon my knees and cried. For all the years she's shown her love, I haven't even tried. So till the day my hands are full of things I'd like to be, I'll ditch the words and say thank God for loaning her to me. Then one year, on Valentine's Day, he wrote, My Best Friend. By Ray Lindsey. When I was just a little lad, let's say 'bout 8 or 9. My fondest hope was that someday I'd have a Valentine. I wanted one both kind and sweet, and pretty as a pup. And though my case looked hopeless, I never did give up. At times I thought I'd found me one, and I'd write her a note. And she'd write back, and say, now bud, you just go sail your boat. And then I'd say, now see here sis, you're not so hot yourself. I've got a dozen, prettier 'n you, that I've put on a shelf. So get yourself a lollipop, and try to pass the time, while I go out and try to find a choicier Valentine. And then one day the picture changed, I found I was full grown. And Cupid stopped to say, come look at something all your own. He introduced me to this maid, and said, it's up to you. Dumbfounded, I said, dear Lord, what's the next thing that I do? With no reply, I just stood there, and drank her beauty in. I knew I had to make a start, but how do I begin? Throughout the months, it hasn't changed, dumb then, and dumber now. But when I'm stuck at making love, she simply shows me how. I guess that's why I know my love for her will never end. This gal's not just my Valentine, say man, she's my best friend. Chapter 5. Committed. Ray joined the National Guard, where he became a quartermaster, and worked as a shipping clerk. He developed a talent with numbers. He could add up columns of 5 or 6-digit numbers in his head, with accuracy. Now, living in Lake Charles, Louisiana, Ray thought life couldn't get any better, when on November 2, 1943, he became the proud father of his daughter, Lenita Ray, who they called Nita. Times were hard, amidst World War II, and money was limited. Ray had been exempt from the military, because of his injured arm. To find work, they moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where on January 28, 1946, he was blessed with the birth of his second daughter, Sandra Kay. He labored hard to provide for his family, often working 100 hours a week. Catherine was a loving wife and mother. She was an excellent seamstress, and made most of their clothes. The two little girls were always dressed adorably, with their hair curled and styled. In 1950, the happy little family settled in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which eventually became their permanent hometown. God was the center of their lives, and they were very active in church, where they formed many lifelong friendships. Ray and Catherine both loved to sing. They harmonized well together, and were often called upon to sing special requests in church. Ray wrote the songs, and even composed the tunes. Chapter 6. The Composer. Except the Lord Build a House. By Ray Lindsey. By life's sea on shifting sand I built a castle, with vain hopes that it might rise above them all. While on the rock not far away, the master builder gently said, "Child, a house built on the sand will surely fall. Except the Lord build a house, in vain you labor. One stone upon another cannot stand. Oh, hear his call today, come choose my favor, and escape the woes of those who build on sand. All the day I'd build upon desire for riches, though the cost would leave my neighbor stripped and bare. And while fires of sin would dance at night, I'd lay my plans for fame, that a weary pilgrim soul could never share. But one day I looked toward a cold horizon, for I'd watched my lofty castle fall and burn. Helplessly I watched debris of a million broken dreams drift away on the waves of no return. Then at last I found myself among the barren, at the devil's booth, where things of earth are sold. And 'twas there I heard these words, from one who'd spoke to me before. Child, an ounce of dross will cost a pound of gold. 'Neath the shadow of the rock, heart torn and broken, I bowed low, to call upon his matchless name. Then at last he poured for me the cup of honor, love and grace, that removed my badge of infamy and shame. It's up to you, Lord. By Ray Lindsey. My dark day has ended, so happy I am. So glad I've been washed in the blood of the Lamb. So glad that I told him, the night I prayed through. My life, I surrender, Lord, I give it to you. It's up to you, Lord, I give you my all. It's up to you, Lord, I'll answer your call. It's up to you, Lord, what I shall be. It's up to you, Lord, what happens to me. It's up to you, Lord, if I fall by the way, to lift me again, Lord, each time that I stray. When I've done my best, Lord, and still can't see through, I'll hold to your hand, Lord, then it's all up to you. I can almost see Jordan, my work's about through. The bit that I've done, Lord, I commit unto you. I fear not the crossing, I dread not the span. I'll leave it with you, Lord, and hold to your hand. The Tempest. By Ray Lindsey. Today as I would wait on thee, dear Lord, restore the flame that lights the fires of love divine, and magnifies thy name, that sends the beacon rays across the raging sin-tossed sea, to guide a languid struggling soul to sweet tranquility. I love the harbor of thy love, though, Lord, I cannot stay. The cries of those lost in the storm keep pulling me away. So give me thine own hand each time to guide them through the foam, for I cannot forget the times you saw me safely home. But when the raging storm is quelled, and love has searched the foam, to see if there is yet a one who hasn't made it home, then I'll relax in sweet repose with those who've made it in, to praise his name through countless years for victory over sin. Lord, never let my courage fail by reason of the swells, for many sink in earshot of the tolling harbor bells. 'Tis such a joy to rescue souls from such a ruthless one, and hear the harbor master say, "Well done, my child, well done." The haunting cries of those out there, in sin's engulfing wave, are pleading, bring the lifeboat, and save us from this grave. So I'll renew my vow to serve, till billows are laid low. And till the dark cold depths of sin has ceased to be a foe. Would you care? By Ray Lindsey. Would you care if on tomorrow, you should stand before the bar? And hear your record read before him, to show what you really are? And there'd be no blood of Jesus then, to pay your bill of fare. Tell me neighbor, just be honest, tell me really, would you care? I can see the crimson stream that's ever flowing. And I still can see the thorn crown, on his brow. I can hear him say it's finished, ere they took him on the tree. Would you care to claim the blessed Savior now? Would you care if he should tell the Father, on that final day, that your sins were never covered, by the price he had to pay? When the cries, give us Barabbas, filled Golgotha's cruel air, that your voice rose in agreement, tell me truly, would you care? Would you care to see your loved ones pass before the great white throne, while you had to take the dark road, never more to see your own? Then to hear these final words, my only son, I didn't spare. Oh, how sad that you rejected, tell me truly, would you care? Blind Bartimaeus. By Ray Lindsey. Blind Bartimaeus sat alone by the wayside, begging for alms of the ones passing by. They told him that Jesus of Nazareth was passing, so he leapt to his feet and came forth with this cry. Jesus, have mercy on me. Open mine eyes, Lord, thy beauty to see. Touch me, and I shall be clean. Jesus, have mercy on me. The adulterous woman, bowed down in her sorrow, fell low at his feet, and cried out in her shame. If thou wouldst touch me, then I'd be more like thee, and ever give glory to thy precious name. Today, if you're shackled by vows that were broken, or a sin-ravaged life you have wasted in shame, he stands now in waiting, with welcome and pardon, for the prodigal one who will call on his name. On Mother's Day, May 12, 1963, he wrote this next song, while in Sunday school class. The Valley Between. By Ray Lindsey. I stood on the brink of a chasm so wide, in the darkest of night, all alone. For Satan had said, you're forever outside, so why fret thyself to go on? Now there was a time when your Savior was near, and your way was happy and bright. But gone, said he, are the things you hold dear, and gone from thy soul is the light. There I longingly looked, o'er this chasm so wide, far away to my Lord's mountain green. But Satan then said, you can never go there, there's a deep dark valley between. From the shadows, I seemed then to hear a small voice, O joy of all joys, could it be? Ah yes, for he said, I've got something to say. So lean a little closer to me. Lean a little closer to Jesus. My child, I have ever loved thee. But alone you can't go through this valley below. So lean a little closer to me. Child, there's but one path, through the shadows below. And faith's light, sometimes can't be seen. But hold to my hand, and together we'll go, through the deep dark valley between. When broadways confuse you, to turn you aside, then keep your eyes ever on me. There's peace in the valley, if you'll just abide, and lean a little closer to me. Catherine had a close friend, by the name of Virginia, so when their third daughter was born on October 11, 1952, they named her Virginia Gay, and called her Jenny. Ray worked as a bulldozer operator. He was very much in demand, as there was a lot of building going on in beautiful hot springs. It was a national park, well known for its natural hot mineral springs. People came from all over the world, to take the hot mineral baths, and to drink the water. Gambling was also an attraction in the city. A great many celebrities entertained in the popular nightclubs and gambling arenas. It was also a haven for notorious gangsters and mobsters, such as Al Capone, Charles Bugsy Malone, and Owen Auntie Madden. When Christmas came in 1953, Catherine announced to Ray that he was going to be a daddy again. He began to work extra hours on the bulldozer, to prepare for the happy event. But one fateful day, in 1954, their lives were changed forever. Ray was driving the bulldozer down a long hill, to a different job location, when the brakes went out on the gigantic machine. The farther downhill he went, the faster his speed increased. The highway intersected at the bottom of the hill. Unable to turn at that speed, the dozer jumped the highway, and Ray was thrown out. The dozer crashed down upon him, crushing his body. Miraculously he lived, but spent the next 6 months in the St. Joseph Hospital, in a full-body cast. He became a clock watcher, waiting for his next pain medication. The injections of a strong narcotic, called Demerol, just wasn't enough to kill the pain, so his buddies began to sneak alcohol into the hospital for him. He would drink it between the Demerol shots, to subdue the pain, until time for the next injection. If the nurses suspected it, they kept it to themselves, because they knew how excruciating the pain must be for him. Besides, they all liked Ray. They all became well acquainted with him, during his long stay at St. Joseph. Ray was a pleasant patient, and not too demanding of their time. He was funny, and they enjoyed his company. Some of them even spent their breaks in his room, so they could hear the stories he'd tell. He composed entertaining poems, which he would recite to them. Chapter 7. The Comedian. A Buck for a 20-cent Drink. By Ray Lindsey. I will see you tomorrow and pay what I owe, for today I'm a little bit short. I stopped by the bar and paid $6.85, for $1.15 nort. The waitress came by, and said, "See here now, sir, I work here for tips, understand?" So I reached in my pocket and flopped my last buck, on the little old greasy-topped stand. Then I said, "Now I hope that you're all satisfied, that I ain't got a dime to my name." Then the tender, that weighed about 400 pounds, smiled broadly, and said to the dame, "It's a shame that he's got such an innocent face, and it seems that he's never done ill. I suppose now someone will write home to his folks, and tell them that he never will. For he's now above, or wherever they go, with the tightwads who've flown o'er the brink. Who won't give a dime for a Madonna's caress, or a buck for a 20-cent drink." Lady from the Lonely Hearts. By Ray Lindsey. Dear Lady from the Lonely Hearts, I got your note today. And finally read it over, which took about all day. Of all the good things you possess, there's not a cause to be. A day you should live single, so why then write to me? You said men chased and you could not shake them by trick or stunt. The story true, is in the chase. The men were out in front. Paul and Silas. By Ray Lindsey. Paul and Silas preached the word, and caused their deeds to stink. But got an awful beating, and wound up in the clink. I'm not complaining, Silas, we've fed the many flocks. Said Silas, neither can I kick, with both feet in these stocks. But way along 'bout midnight, as they began to sing, the whole jail started shaking and the doors began to swing. The jailer came a-running, and said, I must confess, I need the thing you boys have got, because I'm in a mess. At one point in time, the hospital was so full that he had to be moved to a ward, where he shared a room with 6 other men. It was hard to get any rest there for any of them, because there was so much activity going on. One day they brought in a mentally ill man, who kept all the others disturbed by talking to himself, all day. That night, the man sat up in his bed for hours, saying, I gotta catch that train. I gotta catch that train, I gotta catch that train. The other men were about to lose their minds, listening to his incessant chanting. Finally, Ray hollered to him, Man, you are on that train. The poor man looked around, smiled, and said, Well, I am, ain't I? The rest of the night he sat quietly in bed, riding that imaginary train. The other men laughed, and congratulated Ray on his ingenuity. During his hospital stay, on August 23, 1954, Catherine was also admitted to St. Joseph's, to deliver their final beautiful baby girl. They named her Rebecca Day, and called her Becky. The hospital staff allowed Catherine to bring Becky up the 2 floors, to meet her daddy. That was a happy day. Catherine took all the girls to see their daddy as often as she could. It was always an adventure, as they had to ride the city bus. Nita was a very responsible 11-year-old, so she helped her mom with the younger kids. The hospital stay was the longest 6 months of their lives. Ray's cast was finally reduced to a half-body cast, from the waist down, and he was released to go home with a hospital bed, which they set up in the living room. By this time, he had become very dependent on alcohol. Unwanted Men. By Ray Lindsey. Standing by the window of a jail cell. Watching down below as crowds go by. Hoping I might catch a glimpse of loved ones. Through the tears of pain-filled, bloodshot eyes. Somehow though, I know I shall not see them. Satan stole that chance, long long ago. When I became a victim of the bottle. The needle and the pill, that made it so. Standing there, mid-surging tides of heartache. Thinking of the happy days we'd known. When heart cords bound us so close to each other. Our lives were never counted as our own. But somehow Satan saw the tiny entrance. And now the gap between grows rapidly. The acid tide that flows from hell's dark corners has sailed my ship out to an obscure sea. A pain-racked body, lying by the highway. Crushed, to never straighten up again. Months and months they pierced my veins with needles. Hoping they might stem the awful pain. But how I wish that they had let me suffer. There might have been a way to stand the pain. But there's no way to stop these awful tremors. And cold sweat falling like a summer's rain. In haunts of sin, I see the gravestone faces. Their epitaphs inscribed by Satan's quill. Forever doomed to work for any wages. To fill the devil's cup, the pusher's till. Their woeful cries disturb night's stillest hour. While staring at the ceiling up above. When through a rift in clouds of marijuana appears a vision of the ones they love. You'd think they are devoted to destruction. To see them trade their gold for such returns. You see them rush to buy a burning castle. To dig among the ashes of its ruins. So now they live from one fix to another. And back to haunts of sad, unwanted men. Where short delights will soon become their terror. And gnawing pain is certain to begin. Then from the streets below a voice rose softly. Come listen to the words I have to say. These hands that bear the nail prints wait to touch you. My thorn-crowned brow still bleeds for you today. If not for you, there would have been no Calvary. I bore the very smallest pain you feel. 'Twas for your transgressions I was wounded. And surely, by my stripes, you are healed. With 4 little girls, and an incapacitated husband to care for, Catherine was forced to move them into the home of Ray's parents, Jacob and Ida Lindsey. The Lindseys had bought a large duplex home in Hot Springs, so each family had their privacy, but were still close by to help. Catherine was extremely grateful to her in-laws. She loved them like the mother and father that she had lost, so long ago. The days were long, as Ray fought with pain and depression. He worried about Catherine. She was so overworked. She took such good care of him, as he lay helplessly in bed. Not only that, but she had a new baby to nurse, and a 2-year-old underfoot. Nita and Sandy were in elementary school, and she didn't ignore their needs. She made sure they had clean pressed clothes to wear, and their hair had to be washed and curled, every night. And oh! The mountains of diapers, and other laundry to be done, on an old wringer washing machine. Not to mention, the cooking and general housework. But she did it all with love and grace. He loved her so much. He helped in the only way he could. By entertaining 2-year-old Jenny. Catherine would sit Jenny up on his casted belly, and he would pass the time telling his little girl fairy tales and Bible stories, and nursery rhymes. He taught her to sing all the little songs from Sunday school too. It helped him take his mind off the pain a bit, but there were many long hours, that he lay there, wondering how long a beautiful woman like Catherine could continue to love an invalid like him. Ida and Jacob helped out as much as they could, and sometimes, friends from church would drop in with a casserole or something, to help Catherine with meals. His buddies continued to visit, and bring him the booze that Ray had become dependent upon. They brought along mints, to disguise the smell of alcohol on his breath. He would drink it quickly while they visited, so that they could take the empty bottles with them, when they left. He felt guilty deceiving Catherine, his parents, and church friends. But, the pain relief it gave him, was too hard to resist. Drinking was a sin in the eyes of the believers, so at night, when everyone else was sleeping, Ray would talk to God, and confess his sins. Praying that God would forgive him. The Potter's House. By Ray Lindsey. In stillest hours of the night, I chanced to pass a place. The humble wayside potter's house, a man of simplest grace. I peeked inside to search the source of love that I could feel. And saw the gentle form that stood beside the potter's wheel. A warm glow from the window came, inside I heard a call. "O Father, bring the vessel that was broken from its fall. Now silver gold I covet not, for works that I have wrought. But honored vessels they remain, those who by love were bought. But those that should be broken, and feel their shattered pain, I stand beside the potter's wheel, to make them o'er again. I'll not cast out, in any wise, a broken trembling soul, that brings his vessel broken, again to be made whole. I saw him as he stooped to lift a vessel marred and broke. I saw him place it on the wheel, I heard the words he spoke. He said, "Dear Father, guide my hand, to make it o'er again. I love this vessel that you made, and feel its shattered pain. You saw this vessel, ere 'twas made, you know its every line. The making, Father, was your own, the mending, now is mine. So thank you, for the broken things, I know they're dear to thee. But when I mend them, they become a vessel dear to me. For in the potter's house there stands, a wheel for but one thing. To mend the broken vessel, and to make the bearer sing. A vessel, stained and broken, with not a slight appeal. Again will useful, lovely be, if placed back on the wheel." God was faithful and true to his word. He provided the family with all their needs daily. Ray received disability, and they were given government commodities, which were basic foods such as cheese, rice, powdered milk, etc. They never had to ask for help, yet they lacked for nothing. Many times, people would just hand Catherine money, saying they were sent by God, so she couldn't refuse it. The doctors had said there was little hope of Ray ever walking again, but he was determined to be independent. Above all, he wanted to provide for his family. He didn't like the shame he felt of living under his parents' roof, and accepting help from the government. So once the cast came off, he worked extra hard on his rehabilitation. Not many men could take the unbearable pain that he endured. At that time, the doctors had never heard of replacing hip joints, so he was left without a ball and socket, which made one leg about 5 inches shorter than the other. He had to walk on his tiptoe, on the short side, and still had a very bad limp. It broke Catherine's heart to see him in pain, but she too was strong, so she helped him with his exercises, and encouraged him. She admired, and loved him so much. They strengthened one another with their love. Remembering. By Ray Lindsey. I remember the year, 'twas 41, and I didn't have a dime of my own. But I had by my side, a treasure that made me, the richest man, I'd ever known. The greatest worry, I had in my life, was to hurry and get the day done. So I could get home, to the prize of my life, that was love, and laughter and fun. When we go hand in hand, by a little perch stream, if we caught some, well that was okay. And I'm wishing just now, I could trade what I have, for one of those sweet yesterdays. And so, if today, I could have one request, I'd lay flat, the memory of sin. And give me her hand, and let us go back. And do it all over again. When Ray was finally able to get around on crutches, he figured he would try his hand at sales. He scraped a little money together, and bought a truckload of used work clothes, at wholesale price. Then he set up tables on the corner lot of their house, at Malvern and Grand Avenues, and sold the work shirts and pants, a piece at a time. Word soon got around that he had good merchandise, at cheap prices, and before long he had sold them all. He then took the profits, and bought another load. Next, he bought a load of used shoes, and did the same with them. Eventually, he got into the wholesale business, and began selling truckloads of merchandise to small stores, around the country. He threw away the crutches, and used only a cane to balance his short leg. But he had a severe limp, and lived in constant pain, for the rest of his life. He wrote the next 3 songs, that seemed to be inspired by his traveling sales business. Nothing But a Good Road. By Ray Lindsey. Well, it's nothing but a good road, nothing but a good road, when I walk this road, I never walk alone. And there's a lot of comfort, great peace and comfort when I sit down, to rest beside the cornerstone. Well, I was on a one-way road, shouldering a heavy load, and my burdens seemed a lot more than I could bear. When a sweet voice spoke to me, "Change directions and you'll see, that I'll lift your heavy burdens and your care." When I couldn't get up for going down, nothing but troubles and woes I found, and my feeble light had gone so strangely dim. Then I dropped that heavy load, on that troubled one-way road, fell upon my knees and gave my life to him. Now I'm so glad I dropped my load, on that troubled one-way road, and my life will never, 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 never be the same. Now I don't play in Satan's hall, I got a new court, and I got a new ball, for he's changed it all, and made it into a brand new game. Oh, I'd like to say more about this road, where I dropped my heavy load, and the scales fell from my eyes so I could see. Now it's step by step, and day by day, joy and peace all along the way. For I'm walking with the man from Galilee. Salvage Dealer by Lindsey. There was a man who fell one day, on the way to Jericho. The thieves had stripped and left him there to die. The crowd self-righteous all agreed, they knew he'd end up so. And with a sneer they each one passed him by. But then one day a man passed by, they called the Nazarene. And saw him in the dust, there where he lay. He stooped and raised the weakened frame, and poured in oil and wine. And bound his wounds and sent him on his way. Salvage dealer he likes to deal in broken wasted things. Twisted broken bodies, wasted lives and even sparrows' wings. Shattered vessels, gently taken to the potter's stand, gently there remolds them, that's the story of the salvage man. Scars were in the hands that lifted up the man that day. And on his brow were marks left there by thorns. The man said, "Sir, why waste your time to save a wretch like me?" But he said, "'Twas for this cause that I was born." The man said, "Sir, I am a thief, my sins are black as night. And for my guilt there is no earthly price." The Nazarene just smiled and said, "Fear not, son, today you have a place with me, in paradise." Lord, I'd like to make a trade with you. By Lindsey. Lord, I read in your book, that you have riches. That the cattle, on 1,000 hills, are thine. Now I've got a lot of things that I'm not needing. And I'd like to have what's yours, if you'll take mine. In your Father's house it says there's many mansions. I suppose the cabin that I have would do. But it has no streets of gold, or walls of jasper. So, I'd like to make a trade with you. Well, I bought a load of sins from one called Satan. For he made them look so very good to me. But I soon found, that no one else would take them. But the one who died, upon the cruel tree. I admit, I made a very bad trade, Lord. But at the time, it seemed the very thing to do. Now since I've heard about, a cleansing stream from Calvary. Lord, I'd like to make a trade with you. You said to bring them all, to Calvary's mountain. That you'd meet me by a cross, the Romans made. And regardless of how worthless my possessions. If I'd leave them there, you'd gladly make the trade. No one else would take these sins as black as midnight. Wash them in his blood and make them white as snow. No one else would give his life to do this trading. So Lord, there's just no other place for me to go. Lord, I hope you'll take these things that I'm not needing. For they only tend to break my heart in two. And they separate me from my blessed Savior. So, that's why, I'd like to trade with you. Well, I've traded in the highways, and the byways. And I've traded in the markets overseas. But the strangest, and the best trade that I've made, Lord, is the one I made with you, upon my knees. For my tumble-down shack I've got a mansion. For my saddened heart, the joy comes pouring through. For my troubled mind there's peace just like a river. I'm so glad, I made a trade with you. Chapter 8. Conviction. Ray loved the Lord, and he knew that God had called him to write for him. When he wasn't on the road, buying and selling, he was attending church, and being the best husband and father that anyone would want. He resisted the temptation of drinking alcohol when he was in town. His daughters had no knowledge of it at all. He was their hero. After church, he would take them all to the King Cone for ice cream cones. The girls would get the big 10-cent cones, and he'd buy the nickel cone for their little dog, Twinkle. Sometimes he'd load up all the neighborhood kids in the back of his pickup, and take them all for ice cream too. One time, Jenny and Becky went to Girl Scout camp, which was about 50 miles from home. There were about 200 Girl Scouts there, from all over the state. The campout lasted for a week. Which was too long in Ray's mind. On the fourth night, there was a huge bonfire, and weenie roast. All the scouts were having a great time around the fire, singing the camp songs, when one little girl yelled, "Hey! There's Mr. Lindsey." Sure enough, Ray and Catherine pulled up in their pickup truck, loaded down with watermelons, for the entire camp. The family went on lots of vacations together. They often went to Mississippi, to visit Catherine's sister and family. The cousins loved being together, and they often came to Arkansas as well. One summer, while driving to Mississippi, they stopped at a roadside park for a picnic lunch, which Catherine had brought along. When they finished eating, they hit the road once more. They had gone about 50 miles. When Becky said, "Where's Twinkle?" Everyone looked around frantically for the dog. Sandy cried, "We left her at the park." By now, all the girls were crying. They had been gone for over an hour. Ray just turned the car around and said, "Hush now, we will go back and get her." Catherine silently fretted, as the girls cried, all the way back to the park. Their tears turned to laughter when they saw Twinkle patiently waiting, right by the picnic table. Twinkle wiggled happily, as the girls all jumped out of the car, to hug her. Catherine cried happy tears, and Ray sighed in relief. The rest of the trip was fun for everyone, as they sang songs, all the way to Mississippi. Chapter 9. The Children. Little Girls with Glowing Smiles. By Ray Lindsey. Little girls, with glowing smiles, a freckle here and there. Makes everything for me worthwhile, assuages all my care. Some want gifts at Christmas time of expense for others to see. But a kiss from Jenny and a hug from Beck is quite enough for me. As each one perches on my knee, I see gifts from above. And feel life's woes and bitterness, concede the fight to love. From life's sweet joys to tragedy, and once more back again. They share with me each circumstance, as flowers share the rain. There's words to praise the works of men, their natures to appease. But dare you not, O gifted scribe, to describe my love for these. As pure as water from the rock, untainted as the rain. Nor depth, nor height, nor wide expanse, could e'er their love contain. Becky. By Ray Lindsey. Rebecca is a charming lass, with cunningness to spare. Her appetite is quite all right, I can assure you there. Earth's riches for her holds no charms, the bright lights can't allure. For her, the light that shines so bright, is the icebox light for sure. Jenny. By Ray Lindsey. There ain't no ships in the desert. No cactus in the sea. No singing down in Hades, like Nashville, Tennessee. No lonesome ain't in heaven. No happiness in hell. There ain't no fish that's thirsty, these things we know quite well. No skinny ain't on toady fields, no pretty ain't on Diller. If she was mine, there'd be no choice, but take her out and kill her. No Eskimos on Sahara, at least there sure ain't many, and there ain't no gal, anywhere, like ours that we call Jenny. One time Sandy caught a cold and had to stay home from school. When she was well and ready to return to school, she asked Ray to write the required excuse for her absence. This is what he wrote. Sandy's Cold by Ray Lindsey. There'll be an absent one today, when teacher calls the roll. I'll be at home, trying to stop this dribblin' blubberin' cold. My ma makes good potato pie, and meatballs and spaghetti. But I wouldn't know the difference now, if she served me confetti. This menace oft called common has thrown me in reverse. My feet are smellin' nowadays, my nose is runnin' worse. They all sat back to watch the show, relaxed in bland repose. While I stare in a cuspidor, beneath my drippin' nose. I'll tell you most assuredly, though you may not believe. That stuff that's white and shiny, ain't starch upon my sleeve. I don't care much for riches now, and not too much for clothes. I'll miss the limelight anyhow, with this red bulbous nose. Sandy was too embarrassed to take the poem to school, so Catherine had to write another excuse. Nita. By Ray Lindsey. Today is just like all the others, to most folk in every clime. But there's some that know the reason, it's a special day of mine. November 1943, somewhere around the second day, the Seraph Band unlocked the gates of boundless joy that came our way. And there was one who held a lamp, love's glowing incandescent flame, that long has lighted up our way. Oh yes, Lanita was its name. She made me with the giant's walk, a source of matchless wealth was she. She was the only song I knew, but that was song enough for me. And the three that were to follow, Were rewardings quite enough? Dimmed my view of gold that cankers, they were diamonds in the rough. Now the call is coming clearer. Echoes from that distant shore. These will all be yours forever, jewels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Chapter 10. The Consummate Salesman. Ray made contact with several very large shoe manufacturers and wholesale dealers, and his business began to grow quickly. He spent many long hours on the highways and country roads. But every few months, the craving for alcohol would drive him back to the bottle, and he would wind up drunk in some lonely motel room, all alone. Sometimes he'd be gone for a week or two, while Catherine stayed at home praying for his safe return, and for his deliverance. He would be so ashamed and remorseful when he got home. Those times usually resulted in a big setback financially, but Ray always knew how to make money. Folks would say he could sell a snowball to an Eskimo. He was in St. Louis, Missouri on a buying trip one night, when he began to feel down and depressed. He wanted to go to church. He spotted a little mission church on a back street and slipped in. Trying to be unnoticed, he sat on the back row. The minister was a small man, about 80 years old. When he finished with his preliminaries, the old minister pointed his long finger at Ray and said, "You, there in the back. Stand up." Of course Ray stood up nervously. The old man said, "You think you came to St. Louis to buy merchandise. But that's not why you're here at all. You came to hear what I've got to say to you." He said, "I saw you as a little boy sitting under an old oak tree, writing letters in the sand with a stick. And the Lord said, 'You are a scribe. And nothing you do will ever amount to a hill of beans until you fulfill that call.'" Ray would recall the old prophet's words many times throughout his life. The Pup and the Toads. By Ray Lindsey. Tonight I sit in a wayside inn, some 1,000 miles away. Time races back toward a place where a small boy used to play. I see him as he looks into the still pools of a stream, reflecting scattered freckles, and a little boy's secret dream. I see him 'neath his favorite oak with all his earthly wear. A puppy and 2 toad frogs, yes, he instructs them there. I hear him say, "Now see here sport, these children you must keep. And stop their croaking 'cause I feel just like I wanna sleep." He shades his face with an old straw hat, with his head on the lap of earth, and slips away into slumberland, where a little boy's dreams give birth. His dreams he never would divulge, kept them vaulted safe away. Though 50 more odd years have passed, the dream comes back most every day. At first you see a peaceful smile, but then it fades away, replaced by pain on an anguished brow, and he awakes to say, "Now hear ye this, ye pup and toads, I ain't gonna sleep no more. Each time I sleep this dream comes back, the same one, o'er and o'er. I see this shepherd, see the sheep, I counted 99. And if this dream would end right there, then dreaming would be fine. But then I hear this faint small cry, upon the mountain cold. Sounds like the cry of a tiny lamb, that strayed away from the fold. There's a raging storm, a howling wind, a cold and driving rain. But the shepherd won't hear the SOS please, help me home again. For he's at ease in the valley below, fleecing the 99. Caring not for the one that's caught in thorn and tangling vine. So don't you see, said the little boy to the pup and the 2 small toads. I'm sick of this shepherd, sick of this dream, tired of the heavy load. So I'm gonna shake this awful dream, like it had never begun. When I get big, if I have to go to the land of the rising sun. The toads were sad, but the little pup said, "You've not a thing to fear. Look closer, and you'll see a small eye, about to shed a tear. I've seen our little friend many times, when he would slip away, and talk to some man up in the sky, and cry about all day. Now the dial of life goes round but once, he told his little team. So I'll sow my seed where pleasure reigns, till I'm free of this dream." But the boy matured, and so did the dream, and grew until the day when the cry of the lamb on the mount became the groans of trampled men. The old hound dog that once was a pup, had now grown feeble and old. And his lifelong friend was leaving him now. He didn't have to be told. He waited alone by the picket gate, for he knew the time was nigh, when his master would come, and pat his head, and bid him forever goodbye. Said the hound, "If you were still a small boy, and I, still your little pup, I wouldn't be waiting, here at this gate, to give my master up." Then the master sensed unspoken words the old hound could not keep. Forget me soon, but never forget the cry of the little lost sheep. Chapter 11. Coming Home. In the late 1950s, big changes were taking place. 2 high schools in Little Rock were integrated, Elvis Presley emerged as the king of rock and roll, the Barbie doll was introduced, and Ray moved his family to St. Louis, on what turned out to be a failed business venture. It was a bad move, but God still had a plan for the Lindseys. It was there that 17-year-old Lenita met and married the love of her life, 20-year-old Earl Wells. When the family moved back to Hot Springs, about a year later, Earl and Lenita followed them, and Earl went to work for Ray. Earl was ambitious. He worked hard learning the business, and became an important part of it. As well as, a very much loved family member. When Ray wrote this next song, everyone said it could be a country hit. But like all the others, it was set aside and never published. The Bridge to Memphis Town. By Ray Lindsey. Back in the year of 33, we were as poor could be, we worked the gumbo fields of Arkansas. My Annabelle and I had wed, we worked from morn till night for bread, she was the prettiest thing you ever saw. They'd come from miles and miles around, to hear her sing when the sun went down, the nightingale would hush to hear her tune. She'd sing about her love for me, that life was filled with ecstasy, beneath that big ol' yellow, delta moon. But times grew tougher, day by day, and I complain, and she'd just pray. She said she'd make life sweet enough for me. Her pleas were all to no avail, she stood and watched me set a sail, the very thing she clutched so desperately. Then one day Annabelle agreed, to work in town, to meet the need, I'd sell the place when a buyer could be found. With lovely swimming hazel eyes, lips only tried to say goodbye, she drove across that bridge, to Memphis town. The very hour she was gone, and I was left out there alone, remembrance woke, and turned the past to pain. And everything that I could see, all seemed to mock and scoff at me, and say, you fool, she'll not be back again. The house became a worthless drone, an empty shell, the pearl had gone, the smiling things all turned on me to frown. They told me that my madman sword had pierced the heart they all adored, and drove her cross that bridge, to Memphis town. The mailman shakes his head each day, and murmurs as he pulls away, he says I drove the sunshine from their land. He said she stopped to pray to God, while tears fell on beloved sod, that he would keep the valley in his hand. And dear Lord pardon, now and then, because they are but struggling men, to my account write all their charges down. And when I'm gone, don't take away my memories of sweet yesterday, when I have crossed that bridge, to Memphis town. She stopped this side the mighty span, and raised 2 pretty harm-free hands, and said, Lord, I commit them all to you. The choice is not mine own I've made, I'd stay and pick the scanty blade, before I'd bid my lovely land adieu. She closed her eyes but still could see, her cottage far across the lea, and saw her loved ones, tilling delta ground. Against her spotless heart and pride, to plunge beneath old Muddy's tide, she drove a never return, to Memphis town. In 1961, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was inaugurated the 35th President of the United States. The American Civil Rights Movement was underway, and Alan Shepard became the first American in space, aboard the Mercury Redstone 3. Family life was happy. Earl and Nita had bought a house right next door. Jenny and Becky were in elementary school, and Sandy was in high school, in the same class with the future President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Sandy had fallen in love with a tall, dark and handsome guy, named Art Parker. They married in 1962. Art joined the Army, and they moved to Chicago, where he was stationed. The Lindseys were one of the few families in their neighborhood who owned a television set. So when President Kennedy was assassinated, on November 22, 1963, friends and neighbors gathered at the Lindsey home to watch the sad news coverage. The following February, there was a crowd around their TV again. This time it was kids. Jenny and Becky's friends had come to watch the first appearance of the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. On June 30, 1964, Lenita gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, named Michael Jeffrey Wells. Everyone in the family was excited and so proud. You'd have thought he was the only baby in the world. After all, he was the first child, the first grandchild and the first nephew. By 1965, Ray had opened a large retail shoe store, and named it the Archie House. It was a great success. He had a section in the back of the store for a warehouse, and shop where he hired men to operate the big machines that repaired and shined the shoes. Art and Sandy moved back to Hot Springs when Art got out of the army that year, and he also came to work for Ray. On October 3rd, Sandy had a darling baby boy, which they named James Mitchell Parker. The business was doing great. All three families bought new homes. The next year, Melissa Renee Wells was born, and the year after that, Arthur Curtis Parker Jr. came along. In 1970, Angela Michelle completed the Wells family. Jenny and Becky were best friends. They both married in 1970. Their husbands were best friends as well. Jenny became Mrs. Randy Humphreys, and Becky became Mrs. Steve Brooks. The four of them hung out together, all the time. In 1971 Jenny gave birth to a precious little boy, they named Ty Shane Humphreys. All the grandchildren called Ray, Dee Dee, and Catherine was called Mimi. Ray adored all his grandchildren, which inspired him to write a poem about them, entitled, Your Hands Will Just Fit Mine. Your Hands Will Just Fit Mine. By Ray Lindsey. Dear Michael, child of promise, destined to be strong. Born to serve a purpose great, that I've known all along. For God gave me a call one day, I never seemed to do. So you see Mike, when I'm gone, the mantle falls on you. But just a day or so ago, as in a holy rain, our loving Savior came and said, You're recommissioned once again. So from this day, dear Mike and on, the call we can't repine. And should the way get hard or lone, your hand will just fit mine. Dear Mitch, no granddad ever had a grandson quite like you. One who in every circumstance, you love right through and through. And if at any time you think, you're in the minor grace, just cool it man, with Dee Dee, there is no second place. You too are Dee Dee's soldier. No better could I find. When no one else is there to pull, your hand will just fit mine. Love mommy, dad and brother. And precious Mimi too. For you've the kind of love they need, Mitch, I trust in you. Now Mitch, when trouble comes about, let's put it on the line. If you can't see me, I'm still there, just put your hand in mine. Dear Missy, should I ever write a book of poem or prose about the dearest things on earth, you'd sure be one of those. You won me from the very start, you have me till this day. I'll call your name to God each night, whene'er I kneel to pray. So darling, when you're lonely, don't ever fret or pine. Just call Dee Dee and I'll be there, I'd love your hand in mine. Now here comes Kurt the rascal, he'll steal your very heart. While grabbing you by your prize shirt, and tearing it apart. He never buffets at a swat, does not quit at repels. He just keeps right on climbing, looking for something else. When they start giving Kurt's away, I'll be the first in line. Then when the cookie jar's too high, I'll put his hand in mine. Mirror mirror, here comes Angel, I'll not ask you on the wall. For I know without the asking, she's the cutest of them all. Though I failed once Angel darling, try me just once more. In the future whisper Dee Dee, I'll be standing at your door. Tell your mommy that I love her, Mike and Daddy, Missy too. Now your hands in mine forever, Angel darling, I love you. Now make room folks for here comes one, that makes me stand so tall. That cunning smile he gives, would make me climb a sabred wall. Just like his darling mother, who gently strums the chord. He'll win a verbose battle, without a whispered word. So here's my hand ol' rooster, you're welcome to our plane. You've made life so much fuller, so thanks again Ty Shane. So Michael, Mitchell, Missy, Kurt, little Angel, Ty Shane too. No one stands out as king or queen, I love each one of you. And as your shadows lengthen, my frame will stoop each day. The bow bends fast toward the time, 'twill go the other way. Life's upward climb is fraught with pain, bad omens often frown. But I'll push hard as you go up, you'll lead me gently down. But should your way be blocked ahead, strong tentacles entwine. Hold up your hands for I'll be there, your hands will just fit mine. So be of steel-born courage, when comes the surging tide. For mommy, dad and Mimi, will stand close to your side. No greater love than mommy's, no greater pal than dad. No sweeter Mimi on this earth, a grandchild ever had. You'll call their name and they'll be there, with faithfulness and grace. But call my name, I'll be there too, though not seen any place. So now this solemn charge I leave, be watchful toward them all. But most of all, each other, for someone's sure to fall. And this one thing remember, the one you help today will take your hand tomorrow, when you can't make your way. Now Dee Dee is so proud of you, I think you're truly fine. Until the day my hand fits yours, your hands will just fit mine. The next year Jenny had another beautiful baby boy named J. Kyle Humphreys. They called him Jake. Later that year Sandy had a little girl they named Amy Kathleen Parker. Grandkids by Ray Lindsey. The guys all brag about grandkids, in places where I go. And I say looky here you jerks, my kids you oughta know. Now there's 5 gents in my lineup, they're angels every whit. The reason you can't tell it is, their halos just don't fit. There's weighty words about Mike and Mitch, and Kurt and old Ty Shane. Someday they'll share a rightful place, in some kinda hall of fame. And then there's one, called Rollickin' Jake, oh Lord who was to blame? Though this little angel came with horns, that's an angel, just the same. Pure havoc follows in his wake, he's Bedlam's closest friend. When he appears, your peace bails out, and pandemonium's in. But this old boy's endowed, with a very special art of picking out the fastest road, that leads straight to your heart. Then when the battle's over, the last shot has been fired. And none of us can budge a peg, we're all just too dog-tired. Then scan the waves and you will see, across yon lashing foam, old Rollickin' Jake, at the helm of the ship, steering us all back home. Now I should like to talk about some angels genuine. They came from Seraph's choicest squad, and best of all they're mine. As I make my daily orbits, seeking refuge from my plight. It is these that take distresses, tempers them with pure delight. Now here's this missy, she's a foretaste, of the sweet by and by. When she passes, little gents bellow, holy cats oh me oh my. Then I've got this angel, I am so proud, she's my kin. The only one from Gabriel's chorus, that says damn it now and then. Don't stop me now, for there's another, that just came to us of late. Takes me from a sea of troubles, puts me in a new estate. Empty words cannot do justice to the sunshine in her smile. And for that innocent reflection, I would walk a country mile. Guess you know by now it's Amy, that I'm trying to portray. Heaven's powers loaned her to us, that's what I'm trying to say. So Amy darling, we're not asking that you join our vicious plot. For we're guilty when we see you, of the million things you're not. When Amy was about 5 years old, she would sing in church, where her daddy Art was the pastor. She was so adorable when she stood and sang this song, which Ray had written for her, to sing for the Christmas holidays. Christmas Every Day by Ray Lindsey. There's a day that's coming pretty soon, it's even at the door. When tinsel will be hanging, over toys that's on the floor. And goodies will be everywhere, but this is why we sing. Because it is the birthday of our Savior Lord and King. Oh I'm so glad I know him, for he's so good to me. Jingle bells ring in my heart, while I sing merrily. I'm thankful for our country, but I'm not here to stay. I'm going to a place, where it is Christmas every day. We'll all go down to the lollipop tree, and picnic in its shade. Then we'll all ride the big lifeboat, down the river of lemonade. We'll throw a kiss at Mom and Dad, as we go by the fountain. With Jesus, on our way to climb, up the big rock candy mountain. Chapter 12. The Climb. The Arky house was a great source of pride for Ray. He had worked hard to build it, and felt he had accomplished a big goal. He made a small witty sign, that he placed in the window, close to the door. It said, "Our success is defeat." He hired a secretary, whom he trusted completely, to do his bookkeeping. She became like one of the family. In fact, she was always included at family gatherings. Catherine loved her like a sister. Ray gave her the authority to write checks for paying bills, taxes, etc. Everything was going great, until the IRS came knocking, for unpaid taxes. Ray and Catherine were shocked. They thought it was a mistake, until they discovered that the secretary had not paid the taxes, as was reflected on the books. In fact, she had embezzled thousands of dollars from them. They were deeply hurt by her betrayal. Of course she cried, and begged for their forgiveness, promising to pay them back, so Ray and Catherine didn't prosecute her. She never paid them back. This led to a financial crisis for Ray, and he was forced to sell the Archie house. Earl and Lenita bought it, and later expanded it. It became a multi-million-dollar success. Although Ray was glad that the Archie house was still in the family, he was saddened by the personal loss of it. The little sign, which he had placed in the window, had been quite prophetic. The Archie house had been his success, but now his defeat. Ray continued his wholesale business, but periodically, he would fall into despair, and seek relief in the bottle. The binges usually occurred about every 8 months, but in between them, he continued to write. God never took the gift from him. When a song, or a poem, started coming to his mind, he would grab the first thing he could find to write on. Sometimes it was on the back of an envelope of mail, or just some scrap of paper. Sometimes it was on a cardboard box, that he packed shoes in to sell. Once, he wrote a poem to Catherine on toilet paper. This book contains only a portion of his many writings. His love for God was reflected in his songs. Not Guilty, by Ray Lindsey. They brought in the prisoner to the magistrate's bar, stripped of all but the shackles he wore. He knew he was guilty of the things that they charged, he did them all, and so many more. He stood there alone with no one to defend, and just humbly bowed down his head. When a gentle one rose, and said, I'm his defense, and I've come here to stand in his stead. He's not guilty, for I took the blame. This case has been tried long before. Here's the nail prints to prove that the debt has been paid, and you can't try this case anymore. Here's the thorn marks they made, when they read out my charge, when they thought they had my back to the wall. So take off the shackles, and let him go free. He's not guilty at all. They brought the poor maiden to Jesus that day, to a lonely place just out of town. Asking, Sir, should we stone her? She's guilty we know, but he just stooped down and wrote on the ground. She said, Lord, I'm so guilty, but I want to be clean, just one touch, and my sins will be gone. Then he raised up and said, He that never has sinned, let the sinless one cast the first stone. She's not guilty, her sins are all gone. There's a flame in her heart now to stay. Though her sins were as scarlet, they're whiter than snow, her transgressions are all purged away. And I tore up the record that blighted her past, the moment I heard her heart's call. Since she came to the fount, without money or price, she's not guilty at all. She's not guilty, for I took the blame. This case has been tried long before. Here's the nail prints to prove that the debt has been paid, and you can't try this case anymore. Here's the thorn marks they made, when they read out my charge, when they thought they had my back to the wall. So take off the shackles, and let her go free. She's not guilty at all. Don't Let Go of My Hand, by Ray Lindsey. Walking in the wastelands, where I thought I'd find a thrill. Far away from his presence, and the center of his will. But I found only sadness, in that strange and distant land. Then I cried, don't let go of my hand. Don't let go if I wander, from the straight and narrow way. That's the only peace I find, Lord, and it's there I need to stay. For the crooked ways confuse me, in the mire I cannot stand. So I cry, don't let go of my hand. Don't let go in the darkness, when the light I cannot see. For I'm bound for the pitfalls, when my eyes are not on thee. You're 1,000,000 miles away, Lord, if it's only just a span. So I cry, don't let go of my hand. Oh, how vacant and how lonely, for the one who dared to roam. Separated from his Father, and the comforts of his home. There's a longing within, that no human heart can stand. So I cry, don't let go of my hand. Don't let go in the tempest, when the storm is on life's sea. When the stars have ceased to shine, Lord, and the waves all cover me. Mid the billows and the darkness, there's no sight of home or land. Then I cry, don't let go of my hand. The Day of Redemption, by Ray Lindsey. There's a feeling I get, when I look toward the west, in the evening, when shadows stretch long. That the time is so near, when our Lord shall appear, with the heavens host singing that song. There'll be father and mother, and friends of the past, and the dear ones we all used to know. And they're waiting for Gabriel to sound the long blast, for they know that the trump will soon blow. It's the song of redemption, oh sing children sing, let your voices be heard, loud and clear. The days of your conflict, and sorrows are past, look up, your redemption is here. I almost can see all my friends and my loved ones, he'll bring with him to greet me, I know. The millions are shouting, as he calls for Gabriel, for they know that the trump will soon blow. I'm so anxious to tell them, how vacant and lonely, it's been since they ceased to be near. Then I hear them replying, we'll soon be together, for the day of redemption is here. I am so thrilled at the thought, I'll see father and mother, oh the joy is too great to be told. But then I'm reminded, of all the dear loved ones, who have not made it into the fold. Then I cried, Jesus, please save them today, Lord, for they all are so precious and dear. And then we'll all sing the great song of redemption, hallelujah, that day's almost here. There are so many things, I would like to talk over, with my friends of the past yesterday. With the ones who would call out my name to the Savior, each time they would kneel down to pray. But the first 1,000 years, I'd just like to sit lowly, near the one who has loved me so long. And thank him because, I can join the great throng, in this wonderful, wonderful song. Where is Nehemiah? By Lindsey. They have broken my gates, and burned them with fire. When for one fleeting moment, I was trapped in desire. To seek a strange city, filled with death cold and chill. Far away from Jerusalem, on Mount Zion's hill. Outside with the rebels, who took a retreat. Away from his presence, and his fellowship sweet. Now it's from a great distance, I'm sending this call. Oh, send Nehemiah, help me rebuild the wall. Oh, where is Nehemiah? Someone take him my call. My defenses are gone, and they've broken my wall. And Satan delights, that he caused it to fall. So call Nehemiah, help me rebuild my wall. How I long to return to the city of grace, where aliens and strangers have taken my place. My mansion's in sight, of the palace and throne, where I talk to the king, when I feel so alone. They have ravaged my gardens, that were beauty to see. They have pillaged the mansion, my king gave to me. Now it's from a great distance, I'm sending my call. Oh, call Nehemiah, help me rebuild the wall. Oh, look, I see a carpenter, a strong gentle man. He must have known labor, for there's scars in his hands. He said I've wanted to help, since I've heard of its fall. I am your Nehemiah, we will rebuild the wall. If you long for your portion, of the city you love, whose builder was Jesus, sent down from above. The one who has called you, and set you apart. He will strengthen your hands, and he'll strengthen your heart. You know he was a carpenter, and he waits at the wall. To mend that's broken, and crushed from its fall. He patiently waits, for your heart's faintest call. He is your Nehemiah. He will rebuild your wall. Manifested Sons. By Lindsey. Co-written with Jenny Olson. Let me tell you what my Jesus has done. He told me, child, you're my chosen one. I had you in mind when the suffering was done. Upon the blood-stained tree. Well, he gave his life up on that tree. That's the price he paid for you and me. That one day we could all be free, and live eternally. He said, my Father, not my will, I'm only here to pay the bill. That sin has made that they may fill, a place this cross has won. He said, now child, if you'll confess, and trust in me to do the rest, you'll live forever in the land of the blessed, with the manifested sons. Now the story's old, but it's just as true, Calvary was made by me and you. We held the hands that the nails went through. But he rent the veil in two. Now he's sitting by the Father on the right-hand side. making intercession for his allied. Reminding him of why he died, for souls like me and you. He said, "Now Father, I condemn them not. They may have sinned, but I forgot. In the bottom of the sea I buried the lot, so charge them all to me. So take me down from this old tree, or let the ones I love go free. Through blood, their sins you cannot see. So they belong to me." Becky and Steve decided after 5 years to start their family. The first of 3 little girls was Stacy Day, born in 1976, followed by Mandy Gay in 1978. Then Christy Kay came in 1979. Chapter 13. The Chance Meeting. Ray and Catherine were big fans of the PTL television show, and faithful members of PTL International. Ray was particularly drawn to Henry Harrison, who was the sidekick of Jim Bakker, on the TV show. In 1978, they decided to take their vacation there at Heritage Village, and attend the shows. The place was huge, with row after row of buildings. They had been there several days, and learned that in order to get good seats, and close parking, you had to arrive very early in the morning. One morning they arrived extra early, and were sitting in their car in the gigantic parking lot, when a lady pulled in beside them. She was having a problem with her car, so Ray got out, and fixed it for her. As they talked, she told him that she worked there, so he asked her if she knew how he could get in, to meet Henry Harrison. She smiled, and said, "Come with me. I'm his wife, and I'll take you right to him." Henry was not only the co-host of the TV show, but also the DJ of the radio program, PTL Nightwatch International. Susan Harrison took Ray and Catherine directly to the studio, where Henry had just begun the broadcast. While sitting in the waiting room, Ray gave Susan a copy of his poem, Where Two Ways Met. She was so impressed that she asked Henry to share it with their listeners on the radio. She said that it sounded so much like Henry's personal life. So in his very professional voice, and using background sound effects, Henry Harrison read Ray's poem over the radio. Where Two Ways Met. By Ray Lindsey. I stood one day, where two ways met, mid life's mad aimless whirl. A misfit in the sheepfold, a misfit in the world. While lost in thought amid the throngs, my soul burst forth in tears. As I relived the bitter past, of sad and wasted years. I saw again the nail-scarred hand, that beckoned me one day. To leave the crowd and follow him, along the blood-bought way. 'Twas not enough, alone to say, the look, the passion plea. Would haunt me through the coming years, while wandering aimlessly. I wondered if I'd ever know, why Satan won the fight. And led me through the ruthless woes, of sin's dark dismal night. Torn from the ones I cherished, loved, for long ensuing years. Left scars on hearts, no eye could see, and pillows coursed by tears. I saw a faithful loving wife, impoverished, lonely, sad. I seemed to hear the tiny pleas, Lord give us back our dad. What love, they shared my bitter cup, that sin filled to the brim. Their prayers disturbed night's stillest hour, that I'd return to him. They knew that I deferred the day, to walk in that blessed name. That I might heap to my reserve, a fortune and some fame. But year by year they sadly watched, my purpose in retreat. And saw me bid a long farewell, to all but sad defeat. Contrast these two, the zealot went out, without having ever been sent. The unyielding one, soul bursting with grief, was called, but yet never went. Then on and on through anguished years, each day brought more regret. That I chose not the priceless call, back there, where two ways met. Then more and more I realized, the joy that I had sold could not be bought with earthly fare, if I owned all the gold. I'd set adrift the wealth, the fame, to glimpse the silhouette of him who came to call for me, back there, where two ways met. In vain I sought among the saints, for one who'd understand. And with compassion take me back, to him with nail-scarred hand. Then heavy heart, defeat, remorse, each time would drive me back. To buy the flask, to drown the pain, with those across the track. To hear them talk, was but to find, their story much the same. They once had known the joy within, and walked in Jesus' name. But while just lambs within the fold, some shepherd failed each one. To teach them that the victory's kept, the same way that it's won. With prayerless life the foe steals through, the strongest fortress mined. Then with a subjugating blow, subdues the languid kind. The fateful pen of circumstance, inscribes and signs their doom. Their circles shrink from boundless fields, to a bar, a darkened room. They toil to gain the silver piece, that fills the tender's till. As though they love the cruel chains, that broke and bound their will. Satan stole their cup of joy, their song, their mirthful laugh. On faces blank as gravestones, he writes their epitaph. Life now to them, is but a gap, between a rueful birth. Till demons from the chasm deep, shall usher them from earth. Their sorrows deepen with the dusk, and linger on till dawn. Their haunting cries disturb the night, travailing for their own. A black and cold horizon, my bits of blue sky gone. Pushing through the crowded ways, yet ever so alone. The ones who'd proudly called me friend, in the better days I'd known. Would leave a hurt as they passed by, known but to him alone. In darkened room, that night I cried, Lord, I can stand no more. And wept till interrupted, by a knock upon my door. I rose to bid him enter, and found with no regret. The gentle, loving thorn-crowned one, again, where two ways met. No words to paint the beauty of, this transport of delight. 10,000 years I'd gladly toil, for one more equal sight. The pain of all the wandering years, wrought by my stubborn will. Fled as he raised the nail-scarred hand, and whispered, Peace, be still. Fear not, said he, I've heard your cries, I've shared your load of care. 'Twas with a price I bought thee, child, your secrets are laid bare. For I alone could know your pain, when darkness closed thee in. When deep remorse, would take its stand, to recompense thy sin. But from this hour I send thee forth, to those across the track. They too are mine, you know the way, now child you bring them back. Tell them of love, that knows no bounds, of one who bore their shame. Of how I wore the crown of thorns, that they might wear my name. From burnished pews they'll never hear, the story, old but true. 'Tis but from those, plucked from the fire. The ones that's been there too. Through tears I saw the flames of those, their doom, the fire beyond. But lo appeared the cross between, the work that love had done. In golden approbation, for the blessed work he'd begun. My soul longed for 10,000 tongues, to praise this matchless one. From all the spoils of life and fame, I'd beat a fast retreat. For just a place of sweet recluse, to sit low at his feet. Beyond the fondest hopes of men, who said 'twill never be. Beyond a mother's dreams and prayers, my Lord has taken me. A vessel stained and broken, with not a slight appeal. Now radiates a work of love, wrought on the potter's wheel. I would not trade an hour's walk, with this meek Nazarene. For earth's vain recognition, and all men's high esteem. For in that hour he called my name, this blessed one from above. I saw the gall of bitterness, concede the fight to love. No more I see the damning flask, the stench of rum is gone. But this one solemn charge remains, from here, you carry on. I looked once more, to see my Lord, from where those two ways met. I saw him not, but up ahead, stood Calvary's silhouette. Henry was so moved by it, that he called Ray and Catherine into the studio, where he interviewed them, and read several more of Ray's poems and songs, over the air. Old Salty by Ray Lindsey. A burly old seaman, walked down to the sea, the wind in his misty grey hair. But the good harbour-master, gently stopped him and said, Son, today, you shouldn't go out there. There's a storm that is brewing, as fierce as they come, that your craft is too sea-worn to bear. I've known you, and loved you, for so many years, and I'd sure hate to lose you out there. But the seaman replied, I need no advice, I've sailed it again and again. I know every inch of the briny deep, from Singapore to Maine. They call me Old Salty, the man of the brine, and they all ask me about the sea. So it should be me, that's telling you, instead of you telling me. The master then knew, it was of no use, that he should continue his plea. And sadly watched, as the old craft sailed, out to a merciless sea. He told his first mate to just go down below, till midnight, I'll stay at the helm. I'll steer around this squall that they fear, Old Salty won't be overwhelmed. But just before dusk, he narrowed his eyes, for the first time he feared for his life. For out of the watery wastes ahead, rose a blackness, you could cut with a knife. As long as he'd ridden the high rolling seas, and ploughed through the surf and the foam. For the first time he knew, he should have obeyed, the good harbour master back home. No craft could survive a tempest like this, no wind like this, ever did blow. The billows rose higher than the old craft could take, so it sank, to the fathoms below. Only a small piece of driftwood remained, for Salty to hold to for life. Then he looked up and cried, Harbour master, forgive, and help, in this hour of strife. And then the wind ceased, and the sea became calm, no more was the lashing foam. And far in the distance, the old seaman saw, the good harbour lights of home. So, if you're out there, on the high-rolling seas, please carefully scan the foam. You might see an old Salty, on some driftwood out there, trying to make it back home. Think it not strange. By Lindsey. Think it not strange, when I bid thee to go, to the places that others would not. And wonder why greater results are not seen. But little one, hast thou forgot? It's not the results, I'm requiring of you, I simply said, child, follow me. It's not you they reject when they turn you away, but child, they're rejecting me. Think it not strange, when to others you go, taking balm to their troubles and pain. When in your own temple, the sabre returns, again, and then yet again. There's some that I lead, through the lush valleys child, to enjoy milk, and honey's sweet flow. But the heat of the desert, they cannot survive, where so often, I bid thee to go. So think it not strange, that you bear in your frame, the marks they inflicted on me. The choice was not yours, but the choosing was mine, and little one, I've chosen thee. The wilderness call, comes only to those, the adversities never could beat. And if you lead others, through nether-world's flame, you too, must have been through the heat. Think it not strange, when you feel so alone, I too, was as lonely as thee. And thank you for staying, close to my side, as a partner, of Gethsemane. There are those who must walk, on the mountain tops high, and on paths, that are easy to tread. Not knowing they are kept, by the strength drawn from thee, in the valley, they all seem to dread. So think it not strange, that you're special to me, a firebrand that's plucked from the burning. With courage steel-born, and a face set like flint, with never a shadow of turning. A child of compassion, an envoy of love, who from me, thou shalt never estrange. If alone for these virtues, you're special to me. Then child, thou shalt not call it strange. The Littlest Flower. By Lindsey. On a gentle rolling incline, just outside the city's bounds, stands a mansion, massive, towering, over all that's in the town. A forbidding wall surrounds it, and the spacious grounds below. People pause in awe and wonder, what's inside they'd like to know. Guards are stationed, at each gate, of burnished gold and ornate pearl. Postern of the parted curtains, precious stones of onyx, beryl. They'll not allow an alien, or an uninvited guest. Only those that's master bidden, views the wonders of the blessed. Doors are pinioned, like no other, each lock in its perfect place. Unlocked only from the mansion, by a secret touch of grace. In the walls of purest jasper, lies a belt of verdant sheen. Colors envied by the rainbows, mortal eyes have never seen. Bowers hanging from the treetops, yet unseen by greedy man. Endless miles of pigmentation, cross this foliated span. Gardeners work, to keep them blooming, the master overpays their dues. To work this riot of color, and the spectrum of its hues. There's a crystal flowing river, none is like it, anywhere. That meanders through the garden, giving life to all that's there. But there beside the tranquil waters, that gives life to all that's born. The one who holds the key to knowledge, planted there, a stinging thorn. Man nor beast will not go near it, they all evade its piercing thrust. But the master said don't ponder, I shall do that what I must. Now each morning at the sunrise, comes the master, staff in hand. Parts the thistle, sees a sight, to delight both God and man. There beneath the thorn and thistle, in its auditory place, beams a little flowering daisy, that lights up the master's face. Said the daisy to the master, I'm so glad you noticed me. There's many other ones that's larger, and not hard for you to see. Said the master to the daisy, before you ever grew, I made this vicious thorn bush, so not foot could trample you. I love the day, of smaller things, of those who never boast. That's why I come so often, and talk with you the most. It's true, my flower kingdom, is a court of many hues. The gardeners all work patiently, their colors to infuse. But each must have attention, of my gardeners every day. Else they will wither, and they'll die, and be cast out of the way. And then there's those who strive to grow luxuriant and tall. So when the viewers come, they'd see them, over one and all. But wisdom says, take notice, the one who grows too tall. When toppling this one surely has the longest way to fall. So don't despise, the small thing day, those are Diablo's lies. He made a king of Saul, when he was little, in his own eyes. The big things fall the hardest, when they tumble to the ground. For a little stone, from a little sling, brought a mighty giant down. So be happy you're a daisy, and you're my very own. And he who lives in a house of glass, must never cast a stone. When other flowers need me, for problems not a few, they'll find me by the thorn bush, for I love to talk with you. After the broadcast, Henry and Susan invited Ray and Catherine to their home for dinner, and the four of them had a wonderful evening together. Henry gave Ray a cassette recording of the broadcast. Jenny still has the tape.